It is party time.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's a long overdue moment having you on Manufacturing Happy Hours. You kindly pointed out at IMTS, you're like, well, Chris has actually not invited me on the show before. And you've been involved in this since the beginning, when it was kind of a campy Rockwell-only video series and then evolved into a podcast. So welcome to a long overdue appearance on this show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here. And let's talk about the setting real quick. I want to get your impressions on this spot. We are right down the road from McCormick Place. Rockwell's Automation Fair 2022 is about to be kicking off. And I discovered this gem not too long ago, a coffee place called Momentum Coffee. What have you noticed about this place, Tim?
I love the atmosphere, and it's a co-working space. And I think, especially starting out, a lot of you think, oh, I need a space. Well, no, I didn't need a space, but I do occasionally need somewhere to have a meeting.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what I see here. Or hey, we are a family business. I love you guys. My kids and Amber and Mary Bruce are right here, but sometimes you do need a little quiet time. And so, yeah, this would be a great space.
Yes, and for anyone watching the video or listening to the audio, we kind of have a live studio audience here with the rest of the TW Controls team. You're encouraged to take videos, photos, whatever you feel makes good content, because you are some of the best people in the content game when it comes to the automation industry. So
thank you.
But with that, I'm giving a little bit too much away so far. As with any conversation, we're sitting here drinking coffee at Momentum Coffee. Highly recommend for anyone going to a conference at McCormick Place and needs a break or just needs to go to get work done. As you said, it's a co-working space. But this is very real. It's not theoretical today. It's not as if we were having a drink one another. So Tim, how do you explain what TW Controls does as if you're having a beverage with someone?
I help people in manufacture, help people that keep our manufacturing plants running, improve their skills so they're always in demand.
And how do you do that?
I make how-to videos to help them learn how to troubleshoot machines.
And how long have you been doing this for?
17 years, I believe. Yeah.
I didn't even realize it was that long.
Well, okay, TW Controls 17 years, but and now my first video, and I may give a prize to somebody who can find my first video. My first video is actually 2007.
Wow.
Yes, and it is not on my main channel, so it's not that easy as just going hunting for it. But yeah, shortly after that, I'll say 2008-ish, I probably put out my first how-to.
Wow. So you were like an early YouTuber before all the kids were doing it.
Before I realized what it was, yes.
Yeah. No, it's great stuff. You do have some of the best how-to videos in the space. And what have you grown the channel to just up to this point, to give some context?
We broke 50,000 just last month.
Okay. Because for whatever reason, I had like 34 in my mind, very arbitrarily, 34,000. Like, was that not, how long ago was that? Just to provide some context to the hockey stick.
Yeah, Michael would be the one to know that, because I know he made a thing for it. He's not even paying attention. Oh, yeah, maybe he's recording us. Yeah, he's recording us. And I believe it was about a year ago we were at 30.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I love these stories because it provides the let's say the representation of how consistency pays off, right? Yeah. Those first 1,000, 100, those low numbers are hard to get, but if you stay consistent, then that's where you get these amplified periods of growth. In your case, like 15 years down the line from when you started. We're approaching 15 years from 2008, which is crazy. So, well, in that case, let's hear about your story. How did TW Controls get started? Or actually, let's go before that. What were you doing before TW Controls?
So before that, I was working for a local manufacturer, and really, I loved my job. Mm-hmm. I mean, I worked for a local company that was really good about taking care of their employees. And the only thing is they really had, well, we'd have this discussion all the time. They had not kept with the times. They had not innovated. And all of a sudden they found themselves dated. And, either you innovate or you die. And so they got bought out.
Mm.
And I always say there are winners and losers and buyouts, and I was one of the losers.
Okay. Okay.
So 8 months pregnant, or Amber, mainly Amber being the one pregnant, I was there too. But 8 months pregnant with our first kid. Yeah, we both quit our jobs and started TW Controls.
And I think we should add some context since we mentioned the live studio audience today as well. Who makes up TW Controls today?
It is my lovely wife, Amber, Michael, my son, Wendell, my daughter, and our newest addition, Mary Bruce.
I'm waving to them for anyone watching or not watching the video, listening to the audio, which is like 99% of the audience. But nevertheless, no, it's I've enjoyed getting to know the team over the recent years as well, mostly, I guess, post-pandemic, all things considered. We had met before that. But I'm interested in asking you about the family business here in a little bit. But first, we got the background, winners and losers in a buyout, as you so softly put it. So when did TW Controls come about then after that?
It was December of 2005. And yeah, we, it's funny. Because when I love your marketing efforts, I knew how to build control panels. I knew how to program. I didn't know how to put a quote out. I didn't know how to, call a customer, all those things. And so I would love to say that we quit our jobs and there was tons of work, but no, there was tons of work that we needed to do and tons of learning that we needed to do to get going. And, I remembered something, my dad had sold his shop, and I remembered something the new owner said. We did project work, and, the cash flow was always up and down, up and down. And I mean, Amber and I didn't have the money to deal with that. And I remembered him saying, one day, he's like, we're going to start selling air cylinders. And I was like, why are we going to sell air cylinders? That's nothing about what we do. And he said, well, you need a product just to kind of pay your daily bills. And then, use these projects to pile in the profit. And so we started kind of dabbling with making some products. My first product actually was a PLC trainer, coincidentally. It did not work. It was a total flop. I never sold one. But we did begin to figure out some things that we could sell. And we found, I was still doing a lot of on-site work at that point. And so customers would call, they were having trouble, and I'm trying to talk it through them on the phone. And I realized, I need a way to, kind of give information on how to use these products. And so we ended up, I put out my first how-to video because I found that we seemed to get less calls if I had videos than if I had text instruction manuals. And so that's kind of how we kind of stumbled into YouTube.
Really?
Yeah.
So it was simply a way to like reduce the amount of, let's say, reactionary activity. You're like, well, if we just have all these how-tos out here, it allows us to focus more on growing our business, diversifying, doing new projects.
Yes.
Interesting. I guess there's always like, and that's not too far off from me. I built Manufacturing Happy Hour partially out of necessity as well, just needing to reach a younger audience from when I moved to Texas to the Bay Area, where there are a lot of young 20-somethings and 30-somethings making decisions out there. So I didn't realize that part of your story. When I guess one of my questions is, when did you start feeling like you were getting into a groove with your business? Was there a moment? Was it a gradual evolution?
There were a lot of times I thought I had it, and then all of a sudden we'd have a major defeat. And, so yeah, that's a very relative definition of when do you think you're in a groove.
Give me an example of a major defeat.
Major defeat. Well, obviously project failures.
Sure.
I have failed in probably every way possible. Realizing that you need a strong team, and not everybody out there is necessarily as dedicated as you are. I tell you, 3 months after we started the company, actually our first job was in El Salvador, of all places.
Really?
Yes.
Was that wasn't intentional, was it? It just happened to be down there?
Well, we were really broke.
I like seeing Amber. I like seeing Amber your business partner laughing in the background to these. I think this is one of the most unique elements of out of the 100+ episodes I've done. I've never had this before.
Yeah, so we were knocking on doors and getting doors slammed in our face. And okay, talking about defeat, that probably is the first defeat, is knowing that you have the skills that a company needs, and not being able to relay that to them.
Yeah.
And so finally, a customer answered the door, and he's like, yeah, well, we've got this control panel. It's this high purity water and this industrial wastewater system. You think you could do that? And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I have no idea what he's talking about at this moment. And, and he's like, yeah, so we're going to need someone to do the startup on it. It's going to be in El Salvador. And I'm like, okay, that sounds probably somewhere in the Midwest. I'm not exactly sure where El Salvador is.
Really?
Yeah, so I signed onto this project, not having.
You are a mid-Atlantic guy, that's for sure, not knowing where the Midwest is. Come on.
But yeah, so we did that. And we did feel like we were, we were in that groove like you're talking about, but all of a sudden we got to the end of that project and all of a sudden we nosedived again. And I always tell people, if they're like, what should our growth look like? And I'm like, it looks exactly like the state of Virginia. It kind of goes up and then it's going to dip down. It's going to come up and it's going to dip down. And just keep putting that
before. But yeah, Virginia definitely has an up and down look to it on its northern border. The southern border is pretty much a straight line, right? Okay. Yeah. I guess you need to clarify on those two.
Yes, the northern border.
So I had another question. I'm trying to think of what it was. So we're talking about your jobs. I know what it was. You mentioned how you have something that a customer needs, that you can solve their problem, but you don't necessarily know how to articulate it yet.
Yeah.
How did you start articulating that, or how did you start learning how to tweak your messaging to get customers to say, oh yeah, I do need to work with Tim?
The biggest thing I did is really quit trying to do that. I really started trying to give them information to help them out in the middle of the night. When they're having that trouble and they're on YouTube trying to find it, I tried to be that person that came up. And then, when they're later on, like, I need to learn more about that, I tried to be in that position of when they're searching for it, there's that guy again.
Do you get business from like the YouTube comments? Do you like see opportunities where you start talking to someone and then that turns into like a sales call and eventually like a project?
Yes. And I never would have thought that. I never would have thought we would be where we're at with what we're doing. Because kind of rewinded back to, I started making instructional videos really for some products we were trying to sell. And then we built an analog simulator, and it's a lot more difficult to deal with analog circuits. And so we started having to make a lot more just, hey, here's how an analog circuit, here's how a 420 milliamp works, here's our current loop, current source, all these things. And all of a sudden, before it was like, okay, yeah, most of these views are obviously people who bought my product. But then all of a sudden it's like, okay, wait a second, why does this video have, 5,000 views? We haven't sold 5,000 products.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, these guys are not actually using our product, but they're definitely listening to us. And so then I started realizing, oh, well, maybe I can make a video on how to do this and, how to do this. And, people always ask, well, how do you get your first 1,000 subscribers? Before I even realized that there was a subscriber count on YouTube. I mean, we had 5,000 subscribers. And I was just
that was like the first time you realized that you're like, oh, wow, there are 5,000 people that are paying attention every time we release a video.
Yeah. I mean, because really YouTube was it was very low priority for us. Really, we were more of, well, let's go talk to this customer, see what work they have, or hey, this guy called, or they found our website on Google. So really, YouTube definitely came out of backfield for us.
Do you consider yourself a digital marketer at this point, or like an accidental digital marketer?
I'm definitely the accidental YouTuber is what I always tell everyone. I do not put myself in the same, I will say, arena as you as far as marketing. I watch a lot more of your content to figure out how I should market.
I actually think you're better than I am at it. I just use the label. I think there's something to be said about that as well. You're just out there doing it and making it happen and making PLC trainers, and boom, like you're doing digital marketing in the process. But I do think there's a great lesson for the audience to learn from your, like, not even paying attention until you realize you had 5,000 followers, or not paying attention to the follower count. Because I feel like people get stuck with that, whether it's starting their business and wanting to have a ton of customers right out of the gate, or in the digital marketing realm, wanting to have all those followers or subscribers or whatever it is. But
it's a long game. And I think most people aren't prepared for how long of a game it is, and that the metrics that you're looking at probably aren't the metrics that matter. I mean, don't get me wrong, subscribers are a great gauge, views are a great gauge, but that doesn't really show whether you're actually making a connection to that audience. Are you building a community that the people feel a part of? And that's a much more important gauge. And that's where Manufacturing Happy Hour, I think, does a great job, because really it's a community. I could say, hey, we're going to go to Manufacturing Happy Hour tonight. And it's like, it's going to be a great group. And it was, just because you're giving information, teaching somebody something, doesn't mean you're actually getting that out of that video.
Sure. Well, it was somewhat intentional calling it Manufacturing Happy Hour, being like, oh, this is a great live event title. It's a great podcast title. That was on purpose. I appreciate the kind words you're saying about it, but I mean, you're a big part of that community, and really, I should say, the industrial automation community as well. So I appreciate all the work you're doing out there. Trying to think if there's a question I have to wrap up this part of the conversation. We'll get back here in a second. I'm sure we're not done talking about YouTube and subscribers. You've left us with a lot of good information in that regard so far. One other question I have is, TW Controls is located in your backyard, correct?
That is correct. Or technically side yard, but yes.
Yeah, let's talk about work-life balance then. So and I have the same issue having a home office. I think most people have the same issue now that we do the work from home thing so much. How do you balance that when work is it's not even next door, it's on your property?
Yeah, and there's where, everybody wants to make it a balance and scale, and it's not, I don't believe it is. It's much more of, kind of two vines kind of weave together. And really, a lot of times you just have to say, okay, this, we're going to have to take a break. And it's not necessarily a break, but maybe it's, we have a customer calling and he's like, hey, I want you to build these control panels. It's like, okay, I could do that.
Yeah.
But I've got to say no, because, there's only so many hours in a day, and as Amber will attest to, I can work every one of them. And then I went and hired Mary Bruce, who's just too much like me, and she can work every one of them. And so we have to, the power of no is, it's so important on that. Is, we've got to be able to say no and be like, all right, no, we can't do it right now. And there's a flip side of that. Sometimes there is something personally that we want to do, and I've got to look and say, okay, either the bank account doesn't say we're going to do it right now, or, no, this just can't happen right now. We definitely had a lot of sacrifices early on as far as, vacations. I mean, most of our vacations were me finding work somewhere. You want to go to the beach? I'll go find us a job at the beach. And that's how we got there.
Amber's head has been nodding throughout this conversation. Amber, if at any point you need to rip my headset off and add your 2 cents, you're more than welcome to that. Anyway, so as we keep going through this, I guess you brought up something that I have another question on, is how do you decide to say yes at this stage, and how do you decide to say no to something? What are the factors that play into it in terms of where you want to grow the business? Does it align with a main goal? Just, balancing family time. I may be putting too many words into your mouth, but I'll let you roll with it.
So, and there's a couple of sides to that, as far as, we'll call it growth of the business, more and more, it is, how, because I found they kind of correlate, is how can I do something to benefit the person that's out there in the field trying to do this?
Yeah.
And, that's not always the most, or at least on the front, the most financially, we'll call it maybe not the highest in return on investment.
Sure.
But long term, I think it, it builds a lot of trust with people, and that grows the business more. Now, the other side of it, because I couldn't quite figure out where you were going, is also we do have what videos are we making next?
Yeah.
And that now that kind of upsets some people because you would think, hey, yeah, I'm going to make a video because this is a question they asked, and I used to do that, and that led to a really horrible burnout, which we could talk about later, but.
Yeah.
But what now, the video choices I make are curiosity. In other words, what am I actually curious about? Because, users can be good and they can be bad at times. And so, but if it's something I am genuinely curious about learning, then I can really weather about any storm as far as what we do.
So you're building, so if I'm hearing right, there's been an evolution where you used to create the videos based on what people were asking, right? But then, they're kind of controlling your editorial calendar, your content calendar, and you can get to burnout, which we will talk about here a little later. But on the flip side, now you're doing it around curiosity, like you just said. So let me ask this, what has made you curious lately?
What has made me curious lately?
Yeah.
I always say I am the old crusty technician. I am definitely, and this is one that probably even you will, say, oh, not him. But, I am that anchor in the back of the boat, on the back of the ship that's keeping us from changing. And honestly, I am looking more of, okay, what of all this smart manufacturing, everything everybody's talking about is really here to stay, and what of it is marketing terms.
Yeah.
So smart manufacturing, what of it is marketing buzz, and what of it is really here to stay? Because I think our industry has not evolved at the rate it could.
Yeah.
And overall, I do think that's a bad thing, but also I think there's been a lot of fly-by-night things that have caused companies to say, nah, not interested in doing that.
Sure.
And I do see a tremendous benefit that if we would adopt some of it, that, we could have such a faster evolution. I mean, Michael sat there pecking on his phone. How much has a cell phone changed in the last 20 years compared to manufacturing?
Right.
I know we are capable of that.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. This is a bit of a discussion, a bit of two-way conversation, especially being at an event like Automation Fair, any trade show. You see some of the buzzwords and you're trying to separate what's marketing, what's real, right? I think what's real goes back to what you were saying earlier about what actually solves a problem for someone, right? I think a lot of things start with what solves a problem and then turn into marketing, and we forget where we initially came from. But I mean, when it comes to smart manufacturing, digital transformation, terms that for better or for worse I often use interchangeably, I see some of the best examples being simple cases of, well, not necessarily simple cases, but of someone being like, we need to create increased capacity across our manufacturing operations. And we have 10 different plants that are running on different ERP systems. I look at that as a perfect example of leveraging smart manufacturing, standardizing a bit more to be able to get more throughput. But at least that's my impression. I'm curious what you see in that regard when you're talking about curiosity.
Well, and I think, the standardization is such an important word there. We'll say standardization, but not at the price of writing a new standard to compete with another standard. But yeah, I believe that's a big thing. I'll call it third-party integration, because that's one big thing we're shopping for at Automation Fair. We do our in-person training, and probably the biggest thing that customers say are holding, I hear their customers to you, their students to me, they say are really holding them back as far as making these transitions is, they have X PLC on this system, and they have Y on this. And okay, they're trying to buy a software to do this, but there's not a great software that works with both X and Y type things.
Sure.
Trying to make it where, that we can have, that Android operating system, and it could be over here on the Samsung device. It could be over here on, this LG device.
We started talking a little bit more about that flexibility out when I was working in California, just because you have every hacker in the planet out there, like working on PLC. So they want to know there's more of that flexibility there. Yeah. It is there, but we know that, a lot of these companies are pushing like the standardization, which is good in a lot of ways, right? But anyway, moving on from that, one more question about the family business side of things. What's been the most rewarding part of running a business like yours?
The absolute most rewarding thing is that really from the time really from the time Michael was born, is I was sitting there building a control panel. He's probably sitting there holding onto my leg the whole time, and that really, I've been able to watch them grow up and spend time with them. And you could call that also the worst part about it is, yeah, they have grown up in this business and they've had to make sacrifices for this business.
Well, let me go back to something we've touched on a couple times, but haven't really addressed head on: burnout. How did you identify that you were heading to that? You talked about it in the context of creating videos based on the questions that would come in. And then how did you resolve or build in habits to make sure you wouldn't go down that path again, or at least get better at avoiding a total burnout?
Well, and so obviously, as everybody already knows, I do seem to have a good crowd of haters that go around. And, I don't think people
We'll get
realize,
to them at the very end. We can't
Yeah.
not talk about your haters on this podcast.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize the time it takes to make a video and how, a 30-second reply can really beat you down. And I let that really invade my channel, and that's what I will call it. A lot of people, well, you're cutting, you're cutting out people's comments when you don't like them. Well, I wouldn't let you spray paint on the front of my house either.
Right.
But I let those comments get to me, and really, it finally came down to, I'm done. And so I don't know if you know, I quit YouTube for a year.
Really?
Yes, I almost deleted my channel.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, so I quit YouTube. And really, every year we evaluate everything we're doing, and it's like, all right, where are we actually, what moves are we making that are beneficial and what is dead weight? And YouTube was dead weight, and it actually ended up on the chopping block. And I turned off all the comments. That way I don't have to see any of that. It's like, don't want to hear it. And in that, I missed the better half of the people that were watching my channel. And all of a sudden I realized that, oh, wait, what about this guy who was asking this question? Oh my God, this guy was trying to get a job interview and had this simple question I could have answered, and he probably would have landed that job. And I started realizing, okay, wait, there is something here.
Sure.
And that's when I realized, okay, it can't be that I'm making videos completely to serve this audience. I've got to have some reason to do it. And that's where really the curiosity piece came in. It's like, okay, it's got to be something that excites me to learn about and go, make a video on.
So your haters were part of the cause of the burnout.
Oh, they were 100% the cause.
Okay. So 100% of the cause. And then when you took that break, then that was when it became very apparent that, oh, wait, yeah, some of these people suck. Let's just say it like it is. But there are a lot of really good people out there too that are doing
98% good people out there.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I'm regretting not having prepared for this more now, because I just had a great idea. What we should have done is like what they do. I forget which talk show it is, but the mean tweets where celebrities have to read mean tweets about themselves. We should have looked up.
I have a whole list of them.
All right. Well,
no.
So let me ask this. Do any come to mind right out of the gate? Like, what's one of the most ridiculous ones you've heard recently from your haters?
Really, the most ridiculous ones are the ones now I feel compassion for them. I know it does not sound like I have compassion when I post their comments.
There are other people that say the same thing, because it's like, now I realize it's not a me issue. It's more of a you issue.
Yeah, but most of them, want to show that they know something, and they think, oh, he doesn't know this, let me correct him.
Yeah.
I mean, they're almost always corrections, and then it's always like, no, that's not completely true.
Right.
But there's no need in getting into an argument about it, in a comment section. So now I do, and that is a part of, a lot of people, reply to me, why do you reply to these haters? You're just feeding their fire. Well, no, I have to, and I really have to make fun of them to keep my sanity.
Sure.
About that. Okay, this guy right here, he shouldn't have made that comment. Let me just make a joke about here. good grief. I mean, you can't figure out, okay, like, okay, the one that always comes to mind is the guy who really is replying, that, I have 120 and 120 and that made 230. And I'm like, okay, we use these terms interchangeably. It's not a big deal, but he made it out like that, because I said that wrong, that, there was something wrong with it. I'm kind of like, and that's what I respond a lot of times to him now. It's like, okay, did you actually learn anything though?
Yeah.
Or, or
it's
you just want to call out
nitpicky stuff that's beside the point is what I've found as well. We're talking about electricity for anyone out there that's like, that got lost there. I'm saying it at the very least. I mean, even my parents know that though, when you talk about 120. So never mind. Everyone knows what that is. I wanted to add that clarification though. No, that's that is a great example. And you're fairly, I'd say, playful and nice, all things considered, in the way you respond. You're not trying to tear. Yeah, you're not trying to tear someone down at that point. But you're trying. But I think what you said is really important, right? It's part of you maintaining your sanity. Like you gotta push back a little bit, and then I also find once you do that, it's time to walk away from that because usually someone's gonna keep commenting as long as you comment.
Well, and there's, no, I don't let them go on. And usually I do take them off channel. So if someone makes a hateful comment on LinkedIn, maybe I post it on Twitter. If someone makes a hateful comment on YouTube, maybe I post it on LinkedIn. But also, I love Amber and I talk about this all the time. As much as you hate to say it, it probably takes 10 good comments to really overcome that negative comment. Yeah. And that's the downside to it. And but what I have found, and this is an unfortunate correlation, is the more that I post about the haters, the less they post on my videos.
Really?
Yes.
Does that make you sad? Or you're like, oh man, I kind of enjoy having that banter there.
Well, no, because you do kind of have to beat it back occasionally. And so, a good one did just come to mind. A guy really said something that was completely wrong and completely hateful one day, and and it was long. It was up long enough. This is actually on LinkedIn, and it was up long enough for it to end up in my email notification. And I went to it, and it was gone. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's weird. And then I get a message, and he's like, "I'm really sorry I posted that. I didn't realize that this was one of Tim Wilborne's posts. Please don't put me on the hater list." I was like, that's almost worth putting on.
So your audience is getting more self-aware as well. They're like, Tim has a haters list, and maybe sometimes I do say something out of turn, and I should avoid getting put on Tim's naughty list, to say the least.
Well, I have to watch it because it's not you say. I love constructive criticism. I think it makes all of us better.
Yeah.
It's when you say it in a way that is just completely derogatory, or you're trying to step on someone while you're making your point. That's where I think it comes into there.
So we're towards the end of our conversation. I've got a couple questions to put a wrapper around this and give the audience some advice. So how do you what advice would you give to the folks out there that are trying to do their jobs, whether they're creating content, just going about their business? What advice would you give on, let's say, overcoming negativity?
One, it does take a certain amount of thick skin. I mean, to give that part. And honestly, part of the reason my hater list is probably higher than a lot is the way I go about my videos.
Sure.
Most of your episodes, you start off saying, well, you did in this one, and I probably should have thrown it in there, is, how, if you were in a bar, how would you describe what you do? And
right.
I try to be that guy that's sitting beside you at the bar.
Yeah.
So, and I think when I started out in this industry, there were so many barriers that when you get past them, you look back and be like, okay, once you have that knowledge, it wasn't that difficult, whether it be connected to the PLC or understanding this in ladder logic. I mean, there was just constant barriers that were really artificial. And so I've always tried to make it where, I lower those barriers. And part of that is I never try to come at anyone in a video as an authoritative figure. I try to be right there with you when you're trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to connect, I'm almost right there just trying to figure it out also.
Yeah, you're not trying to be a know-it-all. You're trying to be at, like, how would I talk about this if I were a beginner just learning about this as well?
But that does invite people that are know-it-alls.
Sure. Exactly. No, I get your point. Yeah, that makes sense.
But really, don't forget why you're doing something. I think, and know why you're doing something.
Yeah.
You know what? You know, I get all the time. Okay, I want to start a YouTube channel. I'm like, why?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, what exactly? I mean, I want you to. Don't get me wrong. I think we
Sure.
need more people to do it. But your goal, you know, and then well, I'd like to get 10,000 subscribers. Or
Yeah.
actually, the one I
Yeah.
always hear is I'd like to get 1,000 subscribers so that I can be monetized and make money.
Sure.
Guys, I will go ahead and tell you, I have 50,000 subscribers, and we are not making money on YouTube. so forget about monetization,
Yeah.
and forget about any of those vanity metrics. Now we need people to hit that record button and start sharing their experiences, sharing their knowledge. And I'll help anybody that wants to.
Sure.
But yeah, remember, know why you're doing it. And I think if you stay with why you're doing it, then the haters or the negative comments, or, that video that you really thought would do well and has 10 views a week later.
I have this conversation all the time. It's like, I thought this one was gold.
Yeah. I mean, I did. I had one recently. I'm like, I am just looking for it to be number 1 and have the fireworks. You have that in studio if you don't know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's 30 minutes in and it's the number 7. And it's like, oh, well, it was near lunchtime when I posted that. As soon as everybody gets back from lunch, surely it's going to take off. And I checked that evening, it's number 9. And it's just like, oh, man, I really thought that was it.
I've gotten to the point where I've got the different channels, right? My YouTube channel's like in the tank right now as of this recording in November 2022, right? That used to be big. Right now, the podcast is what's taken off. So I'm always trying to adjust, trying to figure out what's wrong. I have a similar question to the one that brought up that conversation of, hey, how do you overcome the haters? What advice do you give to the folks out there? Since you started a business, you mentioned some of the challenges at the start. Let's change this question a little bit. What advice do you have for folks on overcoming the voice inside their head or the doubt of having to deal with what might feel like a constant barrage of losses sometime?
And that one is, it just takes thick skin and just keep trying. I mean, and that's all I can say, because one, I am not, this is one that everybody out there in the audience needs to know. I'm camera shy. I mean, I was talking to them right there. They're like, you're ready.
You don't come across as that at all.
I mean, I will have to take a nap after this, though. I mean, so I've learned to kind of, all right, I guess that is it. I've learned to put the blinders and be like, all right, we're getting ready to dig in this video. Don't worry, and don't beat yourself down if all of a sudden like or I stumble. It's not a big deal. If the customer slams the door in your face, then look for another angle.
Yeah.
And find a good community, find a good group to talk to. And I was probably actually that's one that just popped up. When I was starting this company, I actually met with a group of guys. They were all successful business people, mostly, just by coincidence, actually. But I would go in there and I could see that, I'd tell them about things that were happening and they're like, this is normal.
Yeah.
I never forget. I had one customer that I finally realized this customer is a drain on our company. If there's anything that's going to cause, if there's anything that's going to cause Amber and I get a divorce, it's this customer. And so I went and met with them. Now this customer was over half of her business. Probably.
Amber's agreeing, by the way, for anyone that can't, since everyone can't see her nodding her head right now.
But so I went and met with them. I'm like, guys, I've got a serious decision to make. This customer, they're good money, but they pay late. They don't respect me.
Yeah.
I just went off all this stuff. And one of the guys, was really successful. And he just casually looks over. He said, congratulations, you're firing your first customer. And I'm like, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah. So find a group, of people that can mentor you and that you can vent to, and it's good. Sometimes that is all it is venting and realizing, okay, yeah, this is normal. Everybody goes through this.
Yeah.
Or, sometimes they do have some advice. I'll be honest. It was probably more about venting though. I don't know that I ever got any real business advice.
Sure.
As much as I got assurance that this is a normal part of the process.
I think in the way that you were doing that venting to a group of people that knew about the situation you were in, because they were business folks, they'd been through that before. I feel like that is a way of like seeking advice, if you will, because they gave it to you and confirmed what was in your head already, that it's like, I probably need to get rid of this customer. And they were like, yeah, you definitely need to get rid of this customer.
Yes.
Wow. I don't know if we're going to be able to top that story, that piece of advice here at the end, but is there anything that didn't come up in the conversation today that you were wishing that came up?
You know, the biggest thing, because I do get this question, is, you know, everybody, you know, how should you start in this? And I just got to say it again. Just hit the record button and post it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the sound. Your sound is much better than mine, by the way. I mean, guys, this setup, I'm sitting here watching this setup. I'm like, well, I'm glad I didn't bring any of my stuff.
You got to keep in mind, most people are listening to this audio only. So there's when it's video, trust me, I was in the middle of some very crowded trade shows recording where it's just like bum, 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 bum in the background. But, you know, it was video. We made it work, right? With audio, it's slightly less forgiving sometime when it's a podcast. So, but no, you're right. You just got to hit record. You got to do it. You got to take the leap. Last question, little commercial for TW Controls. How would you sum up what you do one last time in terms of, you know, I know you're doing the panels, you're doing the classes, and then how can we connect with you?
Well, you can go and Google Tim Wilborne. Hopefully I come up, or go to twcontrols.com. And yeah, we help you become a better technician. So if you're someone that's out there working on equipment, and let's say you're in mechanical and you're like, man, if I just understood how this switch worked, then I think I could get through this. Then yeah, we have videos to help you learn that. And they are all free. All our lessons are free, by the way. And yeah, if you are an electrician and you think that programmer has got it easy, first, they don't have it that easy. You'll learn that. But yeah, I mean, go ahead, give it a stab. We have a whole lesson series that, you can walk through and you can figure out, okay, no, I hate this and I am going to stay an electrician, or, hey, no, I want to come over and learn it.
I love it. Well, I will have links to connect with Tim. I'll have a link to the YouTube page so you can join him in his fight against the haters on there. And I just have to say, we did it, Tim. We had you on Manufacturing Happy Hour. I'm so sorry it took longer than you deserved. Like, you should have been right on here early on. But I'm looking forward to getting your story out there.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to our happy hour tonight.
Yes, in-person Manufacturing Happy Hour. What a perfect way to top off the day. That's what I wanted to say. Well, folks out there, stay innovative, stay thirsty. Thanks for tuning in.